An Alabama voter wearing an "I voted" sticker left a popular lunch spot in Oneonta, Ala, on Tuesday. While several factors have been cited in Doug Jones's upset victory, some strategists have suggested that an unusually large number of write-in votes played a role. Bob Miller for the New York Times, Montgomery, Alabama, as supporters of Royce Moore on Wednesday sifted the results of his stunning loss in Alabama. One number jumped out: about 22,800 write-in votes were cast, more than the gap separating Mr. Moore, the scandal-plagued Republican, from the victorious Doug Jones, the first Democratic senator elected in the state in a quarter-century. Many of the votes are thought to have been cast by Republicans displeased by Mr. Moore but unwilling to cross party lines, and who wanted to register a protests. "I would bet strongly it was good Republican voters who couldn't stomach voting for Roy Moore, but didn't want to stay home," said Brent Buchanan, a Republican strategist in Alabama. "It was a protest vote." One was Senator Richard C. Shelby, the Republican dean of Alabama's congressional delegation, who said over the weekend that he could not vote for Mr. Moore and had written in the name of a distinguished Republican, whom he declined to identify. Stephen K. Bannon, President Trump's former White House advisor, said on Monday at a Moore rally that there was a special place in hell for Republicans like Mr. Shelby. An array of factors fueled Mr. Jones's upset win in a deeply conservative state, including a surge in black turnout and pervasive frustration with Mr. Moore among well-heeled suburban residents who ordinarily push Republicans to victory. Some strategists suggested that the write-in votes also tipped the race, depriving Mr. Moore, who was accused of assaulting teenage girls, of the support that a less compromised Republican would have garnered. Those are people who value democracy and intellectual consistency and conservative ideals so much that they were still willing to go to the polls and vote, said Collier Tynes, a Republican who was chief of staff to Dianne Bentley when she was First Lady of Alabama. "But they are unwilling," she said, "to compromise human decency and conservative ideals." No less a strategist than Mr. Trump, who made a late push for Mr. Moore, drew attention to the write-in votes as the race was called on Tuesday night. "The write-in votes played a very big factor, but a win is a win," Mr. Trump wrote on Twitter. "Congratulations to Doug Jones on a hard-fought victory. The write-in votes played a very big factor, but a win is a win. The people of Alabama are great, and the Republicans will have another shot at this seat in a very short period of time. It never ends." Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump, December 13, 2017. By Wednesday night, with the margin between the candidates at 1.5% in unofficial results, Mr. Moore had not conceded, and his campaign made no formal statements. Alabama's Secretary of State, John H. Merrill, said the gap, small as it was not small enough to cause an automatic recount, because the number of write-in votes appears to exceed the margin of victory. An Alabama law that requires that the names of write-in candidates be officially tallied is likely to be triggered. Mr. Merrill will determine whether the counting requirement applies by noon on Monday. Such a count would reveal who, exactly, had snared the votes that might have secured a rare Democratic victory. Past elections have shown a variety of write-in recipients: friends, neighbors, pastors, and imprisoned former governor. Perhaps in that spirit, a liberal super PAC sought to starve Mr. Moore of support by promoting Nick Saban, the head football coach at the University of Alabama, as a write-in. Mr. Saban, who has won 4 national championships at Alabama and is the state's highest-paid public employee, has said relatively little over the years about his politics, but he is an especially common write-in. A spokesman said Wednesday that Mr. Saban was not available for comment. County-level results suggested that write-in votes hurt Mr. Moore. In 2 large counties, Madison and Tuscaloosa, write-ins accounted for at least 1.9% of the votes cast, ahead of the statewide average. Mr. Jones won both counties, each of which Mr. Trump carried. In 2016, in exit polls, demographic groups with the largest proportions of write-in votes include white college graduates 3%, and voters aged 18 to 29 3%. Samuel Moffett, 26, a chemical engineer, called himself a strong Christian who used to vote straight Republican. This time, he said, he wrote, in the name of Ron Bishop of the Libertarian Party. Despite Mr. Moore's strenuous appeals to evangelical Christians, Mr. Moffat said that he found the candidate's attacks on his female accusers, and his past suggestion that homoequality should be criminalized, to be disqualifying. I don't think he really acts on the Christian beliefs I want people to associate with my faith, said Mr. Moffat, who lives in St. Clair County. He uses his faith as a cop-out. Nicholas Franklin, 28, a cybersecurity specialist in Madison County, said he wrote in the name of a local librarian because he thought Mr. Jones was too liberal, and because he disliked Mr. Moore, who was effectively removed twice from the state Supreme Court, even before the accusations of UAL misconduct. I don't vote for demagogues, he said. Alan Blinder reported from Montgomery, and Trip Gabriel from New York. Mark Tracy contributed reporting from New York. A version of this article appears in print on December 14, 2017, on page A19 of the New York edition with the headline, "In 22,800 writing votes, intriguing clue to an upset."